young men and mental health issues. I think this is a topic that, in all fairness, I could do a whole channel about this. It's something I mentioned sometimes in previous clips, and what's a young man? That's a matter of opinion as well. And young men become old men, and they usually take along their issues with them when they grow older. Some people, they improve with age, and others don't. So, what's to say about this? When I'm on the internet, which I am very often, and I watch what people say, their opinions about things, political stuff, I'm not sure I can see mental health issues there as much as I can see identity issues. I think that is the take we have on this, rather than actual diagnosis. Could be a lot of those, of course, but in general, in all fairness, it's safer to say identity problems, identity crisis. And this is often met with two things. In best cases, it is met with a way of trying to describe it as a health problem, a mental health problem. But if you know anything about mental health problems, you also know that unless a person accepts this for themselves, they are going to see it as an insult. So that is probably the common take on it. When you, as a young man, are told that you, because of your issues in understanding what you're supposed to do and who you're supposed to be and so on, there's something wrong with you. Either your values are screwed up or your mental health is screwed up. The thing is, people don't like being told that there's something wrong with them. Even if there is something wrong with them. It is to put it mildly, it is the wrong approach to dealing with people. I mentioned this before. Don't do a diagnosis of someone unless you actually know what you're talking about. And most people who try these things on the internet with others, especially when they do it with an entire group of people, they don't know what they're talking about. They are, in many cases, also not very. They don't have really good intentions. Let's put it that way. They are ideologically very different from the people they talk about. So it's going to be a lot of ranting, a lot of name calling, and so on. And surprise, surprise, nobody likes being labeled in a way that they don't see themselves. I wish political people understood this. we would have a much better day without a lot of name calling. It is something that you should keep to yourself, or if you're attacked, maybe that is okay. If some idiot calls you an idiot, I think it's fine to call them an idiot back. But in other cases, it's not. And if you attack a lot of young men, call them incels and call them manlets and whatever. I'm guilty of doing this. I do it intentionally to provoke people on the internet sometimes that I'm annoyed with, because it's fun. It's fun to annoy annoying people or people with really bad values. But will it change anything? Probably not. Not for the better. If my intention was to actually help people or make people change. It is the only real way of doing so is by leading by example. People like people who lead by example. People like honesty. People like integrity. And if you go by those things, you're going to notice that a lot more people will listen to you than if you attack them. Because people don't like to be attacked. And while this sounds like the most obvious thing in the world, the entire political world today is evidence that it's not. People don't understand this. They don't. And young, angry men that struggle with their identity, their role in modern Western society, they do what people always do when they struggle. They look at simple things, simple solutions, things that, in retrospect, with the shimmer veil over it, it looks like something that worked. So they tend to look at conservative things and become, in their mind, reactionary conservatives and so on. But it always goes out of control, of course, and it leads to really, really strong opinions about things that is hard to look at from another perspective as sane or even rational. Sometimes it is very emotional, and it is masked as a thought out process. I know I'm being vague here, but I think you know what I'm talking about. I'm trying to be vague because I want this to be a topic that is general about all these things. Identity is hard. Hey, I got borderline personality disorder, and for me, my sense of self is always something very vague. I mean, I know who I am, of course I do, but the very fact that I can shift personality quite easily, being a chameleon, as I've spoken in various topics before, proves that, yeah, my sense of identity is vague at best. And this is something that is, of course, difficult for all people. And I always grew up in a society where, well, it's not society's fault that my sense of self is a problem, because I grew up in an environment with pretty stable role models and so on. I never struggled with it on a ideological point of view. I've always been quite progressive and what Americans call liberal. It was no big deal for me with how people identify themselves. That's for each person to do as they see fit and what is natural to them, the biology of it all and so on. But it isn't for everyone. That's a simple fact. Identity is hard for everyone. I wish more people understood this and didn't make fun of people who struggle with this, because we live in a world where identity is something that changes all the time. It is hard to tag along and follow everything related to people's identity, gender, and so on. Because society changes at some lanes a lot faster than it does in others. And regardless of what you think is normal, not normal, correct, and so on, that it's a simple fact that not everyone is going to go the same route you do, the same path you do. Some people will struggle greatly in tagging along the path you go, or a group of people go. And I'm pretty sure that a general difficulty in identity is a part of this. Identity is hard, and it is hard for everyone, not just people with mental conditions. So if you want people to understand your perspective, you should treat them respectful, even if they're assholes. Even if they are, even if they show no intention of respecting you, I'm convinced for the simple fact that if you start treating them bad in any way, that won't help. Because it is a natural instinct among humans that if we are attacked for some reason, then we become defensive. Then suddenly this perhaps created identity we have becomes important. Tribalism becomes important. I mean, there's nothing like a military attack on a country to bring people together in an identity of nationalism or stuff like that, to be supportive of each other. I mean, this is a well-known fact throughout history. And this works in a similar way on an individual level and on other group levels. Attack young men for being this and that, and they will act in a way to be defensive, perhaps owning the label you gave them, not previously really identifying with the label you gave them or even agreeing with it, but because you are an asshole and treat them like crap, derogatory, and just calling them things like certain politicians like to do, that will bring them together in a community of whatever you like to call them. You will realize the simple thing that perhaps didn't exist before. And even if it did exist before, you did nothing to do anything better. All you did was dig a deeper trench and make your enemy, quote unquote, dig a much deeper trench as well. And I'm sad to say it looks like things will only get worse until it finally doesn't lead to anything else but outright conflict. I mean, war and stuff like that. Tribalism is a scourge of mankind, but it is a part of us, and if you don't navigate it in a way to treat people with respect, even if you dislike every ounce of their opinion, you will most likely worsen the situation. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be mean to someone. I mean, if they are outright mean, you can be mean back at them. But if you do a sweeping statement about an entire group of people, young men in general, or people living in certain regions in general, well, then you're going to offend a lot of people who didn't do anything to offend you, basically. And they are going to group together. And, well, we can all see what this has led to in the world. So, a bit of a political post maybe, but I think it is a general post that most sane people would agree with. If you escalate a conflict, the conflict will escalate. It is as simple as that. All right, this is the Borderline Man signing off.